Hello and welcome. I'm standing at the former border between East and West Germany, or at least almost standing at the former border. In this video, I'm going to take you through the border thanks to this open air museum where the border has been preserved. And you can see what it looked like. To a large extent, you're going to have to use a little bit of imagination. The first thing I'm going to show you is this road. Notice how narrow it is. The road, I think, is largely new. When East Germany came about, effectively the Soviet occupation zone of Germany after the Second World War, it was crisscrossed by roads all over the place. Germany was founded by a huge number of tiny states, some states only as small as a small town. There was a reform during the Napoleonic period, but even by the time that Bismarck unified Germany in 1871, there was still a lot of states. Germany was a federal country, and even Bavaria, for example, had its own king. The Kaiser, the king of Prussia, became the emperor, as effectively it was Prussia that won the wars of unification. There were a number, I think I'd have to say. And two of those countries we're looking at here. Well, one actually. Bavaria, because Bavaria had its own king. Its borders today, incidentally, are very similar to what they were in 1866. Very similar, not quite the same. Actually, if anything, Bavaria is just a little bit bigger. The country, I've called it a country, it's not a country, it's a state, a lander, Thuringia. Thuringia was largely a creation of the First World War, at the risk of starting any arguments with people who are sort of Thuringian, sort of nationalists or something. But Thuringia was largely a creation of the First World War. One of a number of states within the Weimar Republic and indeed Nazi Germany. The Thuringia that exists today is it has, to a large extent, it has been created after unification. But I'll do that in a different video, because if I go into a history of Thuringia, I'll end up not talking about what I want to talk about, which is this here. Now, I mentioned the small road. You see how I went off on a tangent. The small road is new because it linked the east, where I am now, with the west. I bet if you look at old maps, we'll find a little road here. But bear in mind that today roads are bigger, they're wider, they have to have traffic in two directions. I drove down here last night. Now the border is over there. That is the west. Is that in that direction? In fact, it's more in that direction if I was going to be more specific. So I came from the west and drove into the east. But Bavaria is to the south of Thuringia. And the south is down there. And that, we can see the tree line down there, that is the border. And I'll come on to why the tree line was the border. Although it's pretty obvious, really, isn't it? So the road's new. It's a small road. When I came down, there was just me. Well, I went slow to allow somebody to get out of it quickly, but then drove about 3 kilometers down this road, and it was no one else came. But I came yesterday evening. Here we've got the first fence. Now, to get into the border area, you needed a special permit. To live in the border area, you needed a special permit. So if you got this far, so close to the border, see the border down there, the tree line, you already needed to have a special permit. What I'm now going to show you is the 7 or more lines of defense. So there's at least 7. Defense, is that the right word? No. It's to keep people in. Security. First thing we've got is this wire mesh area here. Some of these things may be original. I think it's all original. It just might have had to rebuild them. I must say though, that barbed wire is in really good condition. And one thing I noticed when doing Holocaust research was that, for example, we noticed that the Second World War barbed wire was often better than the communist era barbed wire. We were looking at stuff at Poniatowa, which was a camp, a ghetto plus a camp near Lublin, and the older stuff, they were noticed the older barbed wire was a much better condition. So we've got coming in to the forbidden area, the absolutely forbidden area. So there was a sort of forbidden area, but you could get permission to live in it. But here, nobody, unless they were part of the border troops, could get this far. That, of course, is a gate. But behind the gate, we've already got this here, a sort of tripwire, which would be pulled taut and would be released if a vehicle had to get through. And vehicles did have to get through, of course. So that would be like that. But you can see the way the barbed wire has been done with this V type construction with barbed wire going across, making it somewhat difficult to actually scale. You may be thinking, "There, that doesn't look very high. I bet I could get over that." Well, you know, okay, maybe not now, but when I was in my 20s, yeah, sure, I think I could have got over that, but I'd have got my clothes shredded in the process. Now, as I mentioned, Bavaria was a state. There was lots of little states, and in here we've got what appears to be a former border post, and sometimes you can find them just by going through the countryside, the former border posts between Bavaria and whatever the other country was. One of the many countries. There was one, I was with a friend in 2019. Somebody we'd met had escaped at the point, and so we went looking for the place he'd escaped at, and in the foliage we found a border post between I think it was Hesse and what was the other, on the other state? Forgotten. Whatever the other one was. But anyway, we found it. Right, so now we're going to walk through. We wouldn't be allowed here at all in the former time. So you can see here, it's the German, or the inter-German border. I would translate that as into English. Freeland Museum's open air museum. And so, something called the Iron Curtain Trail, which was creation, I think, of a Dutch member of parliament. I think, if it wasn't Dutch, I apologise. But the idea is to create a path showing the communist occupied parts of Europe to the democratic parts of Europe, and having the possibility of either walking or cycling the whole thing. Well, you have to be a pretty good walker, because it starts off at the Baltic Sea and finishes up at the Black Sea. Something I'd really like to be able to do myself, though. I've been talking about doing it in Germany for 25 years or something. I still haven't done it. Now, today we've got GPS and all the rest of it, and we can find the location of the border, where it was. But in the old days, people didn't have these things, and indeed when the border was set up, it was called a Biermat border. They didn't quite really know where the borders were in many cases. Now, I did mention these old states, but often they couldn't quite determine where they were. Now, one thing though, if your GPS isn't working very good or something like that, you can find the border always, or nearly always, by these concrete slabs, because along the entire length of the border, the East German authorities placed a road of this nature, and that was just behind the border itself. And to a large extent, it still is in existence. Now, as we come through this area, you'll have noticed that on the right hand side up there is a guard tower. These guard towers were along the entire length of the border, and they were in this area in general. Now, the ones in Berlin are quite well known. You've seen them in films and things, but along the entire length. Now, I was in East Germany and East Berlin, for that matter, in the 1980s. And if you travelled in Berlin, you could get on the bus in West Berlin, and you could see in some place, such as at Wannsee, if you went there, you could see over into East Germany if you got on the top floor of the double decker, and you could see, for example, there they had wire fence. It wasn't a wall as such. In some places it was a wall, but it's, as you'll see here, it's a number of walls, not just one. Just a personal bit now. There's my motorhome. So I parked my motorhome here, came here last night, and it's incredibly quiet. The birds were singing till late. And guess what? I didn't sleep very well, probably because it's so quiet. I've just been at a trade fair. There was music on, live entertainment on, until I haven't got a clue. But you know, I'm in bed at 10 o'clock. I went to sleep during it. In fact, one night I woke up, I think, because they stopped playing. Now I find myself here in wonderful nature, and I find it more difficult to sleep. So here you can see the path. This is a path which is going to go around the border areas, and it's in the same location. Now, of course, in those days, farmers weren't farming the fields. The border areas have been given over now to the farmers, but I think we can see more or less where this museum is. Let's now come down a little bit further. Now, as a rule, in the watchtowers, there were at least two people, and they picked two people who initially didn't know each other. So the people were mixed. So if you were recruited into the border troops, you could even be put in even as a conscript. Then they didn't want people who knew each other. So if one tried to escape, then the other will be there to shoot him. For example, I know there's one case where there were two people in a tower, and one took out the firing mechanism of the weapon of the other one. Then he picked up his own weapon, and when the other person noticed that he was trying to escape, he wouldn't have been able to shoot him. Whether or not he tried or not, we don't know. Now, in West Germany, a person who shot an escapee could be tried, but legally it was quite difficult, because unlike the Nazis, who broke the law repeatedly, in East Germany it was not illegal. In fact, it was the duty to shoot somebody who was escaping. So the East Germans changed the law, and I mean, I know this is a very fine difference, and a difference which may not interest the victim themselves, but when it comes to putting people on trial, it really is very important. Now, I said about the border. The border is the tree line here. I measured it actually last night, so using GPS. So the border here, it follows the tree line. So, and then you notice that the tree line goes back like that, because here directly in front of me, the border went like a kink like that. So we're now going south, and actually the border wasn't straight. It followed rivers in some places, and it moved around. There are even places where East Germany's to the west of West Germany, And in places, a couple of places where East Germany is to the south of West Germany, but that's the way borders work. Now, we're now within meters of the border into the west, and here we've got the strongest what can I say? The strongest means of stopping anybody going out. Now, one thing you have to bear in mind is that time has taken its toll. And so, well, we'll see. There you've got these tank traps, dragon's teeth. Sorry, not really tank traps are made of concrete, sorry. But dragon's teeth or whatever, obstacles, if you like. Beyond the obstacles, there was a ditch which was about 6 meters long. And here, I've got, there's some, conveniently, we've got something here which has been put up. So, we've got the protection area, which we've just walked through now. We've got here, in this area, there we've got the number 7. We've got the dragon's teeth. Then we've got a ditch. Now, the ditch is no longer 6 meters wide. Just about a meter now. This is what happens in time. Right? So, then, number 5. There's a bit of a ramp up. And usually, this was with concrete or other types of obstacles. And then, we've got the fence. The fence is still here. But having said that, it was higher than that. The fence would normally be about 2.5 meters. Then, beyond the fence is the minefield. Let's go through the minefield. Then we've got the border post, and then we've got the final gate, if you like. So, what we're now doing is, we're now going into the minefield. So, the East German border patrol would use this path, but beyond that it couldn't enter. So that was it. So they would patrol the border. Now, who put the mines in? So obviously somebody's going to have to put the mines in. Well, yes, but that was done with all sorts of a number of people actually doing it until quite recently. In fact, there is signs up now, you may have noticed, about being careful, and there's still a danger. But there were signs up, for example, I did video in 2008 on the border, and then there were signs up saying that they cannot guarantee that it's been demined. And this was the second most mined area in the world after the North Korea border there. Where this stone is marks the point where a young boy was blown up by a mine in 2001. So the 10th of March 2001, 10-year-old Manuel Earhart. So it was a trip mine type ppm2. Now, there is what looks like a border post. There were warnings at the other side, which I can recall, that does not mark the border. There was also warnings in Berlin not to go into the eastern bit, because sometimes they didn't follow. In the parts where the border went like this, for example, they'd just put the defences along there, so the bit that sort of protruded in and out, they didn't put the fences for obvious reasons. It wasn't always that easy, but there were warnings. Don't go in there. They could just suddenly grab you, come out from nowhere and grab you. So you see, this border point here, this would show to people over there that this was East Germany, but it isn't. It isn't the border. The border's over there. This is a really important difference. Now let's come over here to the final border. And the border, as you can see, the real marker was just normally a post. and it's here. So I measured this last night. So this is Bavaria, and so now that is what the border actually looked like. That was put up by the West German authorities at the very border, and here we've got some signs, one of which I can actually remember. Warning, border, going beyond this point you can risk your life. So things like that. You had to stop here, and so it's the white and blue stripy sign, which shows that that is the border. That's it. Don't go beyond it, because they actually did have the right to shoot anybody who just walked across. And here, this is an interesting sign here. So this is from June 1989, and here we've got the some instructions, but I'm going to point one thing out. The border with the DDR is no man's land. Right, so it's not a case of you could just go in there and have a game of football or something. You can't do that. They can use deadly force against anybody going in. Now, of course, you might ask the question, why would you want to go in? Here we've got this map has been used in various books and all sorts of, but it's worth pointing it out as well. So here you've got the blue and white sign. Just in this case, just behind this, you've got the border. You've got the border posts in East German side. If there was a road here, and there were lots of roads going in and out of in 1945, lots of roads going in what was to be the border. We've got a gate in this case, but we've got the wire mesh sign. We've got the ditch. We've got the lights. The lights here have actually gone, but we've got types of guard towers. We've got this one here with a octagonal sphere, and this one here square, which is up there. We've got more areas which are with dog runs, for example. I can recall seeing them at Vance, or the other side from the border from Vance. There we've got the big square watchtower. We've got sort of areas within this with hidden so guard posts, which were almost underground, a bit like bunkers, if you like. We've got a wire mesh fence. We've got the thing to stop people actually coming towards the wire mesh fence, and guard posts. And here we've got a village, and in some places you can see where the village, the fences actually went around the village, so they would allow a little bit here into the forbidden zone, but people were encouraged to leave or forced to leave the forbidden zone. So the area, even in some places as far as 5 kilometers back, you needed special permits to actually get in there. So that gives a very clear idea of what it's like. The fence, beyond the fence where the control part was, the road with these concrete laid down what do you call it? Concrete road, that was lit up, and you could see it. I mean, at night it was very bright. It was floodlit, but there were when you think floodlights, often you think things like football matches and things. So these were sort of like street lights, if you like, but it was absolutely light. Now, just point this one out here. So the tree line is West Germany. And why was the tree line West Germany? Because in East Germany they used defoliants, they knocked the forests down, and therefore it's even today, okay, here it's pretty clear, isn't it? 30 4 years later, and we can see where the border was because of the use of defoliants. Now, in the early 90s, it was believed that the defoliants would create for very long periods of time an area where the vegetation would not grow again. But just you can see here that the vegetation has come back. Or even look at this down here, for example. That is that's new. That has grown in the past 34 years. Nature has proven to be much stronger than what was feared at the time. That no, this is and it has come back. Also, for example, defoliants which were used in Vietnam as well, which caused so much suffering to both sides, of course, in the Vietnam War. I believe that in many places the jungle, the forest, has regrown in Vietnam, but that's I might be incorrect on that one, on the long-term use of defoliants. But here in Germany, you can tell it's not so obvious in some places as it used to be. And some places you've really got to look closely at the differences between the trees. Also, as some of the older trees in the west have started to die and being replaced by new ones, makes it even more difficult. So walking down here, now here we've got a stretch of the border which has been preserved in this museum. So it's approximately a 3 kilometer or so stretch where people are invited to walk. But if you don't want to come to a museum, you can still find places and walk down the roads as well. There are museums in Germany, the entire length of the border. Every few kilometers there's something showing what it was like, and the number of these museums is growing all the time. On my YouTube channel I've got 1 or 2 which I did in the noughties, like 2008. I think I did one, first one after 2007, filming what it was like then as to what it's like today. The area where people were expelled from, still to a large extent, you can see that despite the 3rd century that it hasn't been here, it's still not as populated as it is beyond that. In former East Germany, there is a strong population decline. And although this happens in many places in Europe, for example, if you take southern Italy, there's places where hardly anybody lives anymore. There is a trend for people to travel to larger cities for reason of work or what have you. And okay, that was what happened in my life. For example, I left the area I came from for reasons of work. In East Germany, former East Germany, people largely haven't come back to where their grandparents. At the end of the day, you might not say, well, why go back? What's the point? So I find this sort of thing really fascinating. This is something I can remember very clearly. I travelled through East Germany on a number of occasions. I only wish I'd been filming then, and I was in. Of course, then it was a bit different. Film actually cost quite a lot of money, and the cameras were really, really heavy. And our first time I was in East Germany was in 1982, and then I was on the train, and so I crossed at Helmstedt, and there the there was a gate for the railway train. Somebody opened the gate. You went into Marienborn, the small railway station there, and then there was a cursory glance at the passport. It wasn't really much, but it was at the other end. So that travelled to West Berlin, but then from West Berlin to Poland. One thing I can recall that was August 1982, was in the Ostbahnhof in East Berlin. There was a train with Russian people on, and every 25 meters there was a guard with a Kalashnikov in front of the train. I think stop people from the Soviet Union getting out. Sorry, when I say Russia, I meant the Soviet Union. I should have said Soviet Union. There could have been people from Belarus, I don't know. I really like this time of the day, early morning. It's now 7:30, so I got about 5:30. It gets light now around 4:30 in the morning. It's June. It's the 13th of June. So this is the time. This is the time to get up and feel feel nature, in my opinion. I can see there hasn't been anybody down here for a very long time. So I hope you found that interesting. I do lots of videos related to the Cold War, German history. Okay, my specialist area is the Holocaust, but also I am interested not only in Nazi German history, but also in East German history. I'm sorry to say, if you're interested in West German history, then as things stand at present, you're not going to find anything on this channel. But East German history, yes. Well, maybe that's a bit unfair, because I have done videos on the fate of former Nazis, for example, and then that was in West Germany. So that's the sort of thing I do. I sometimes do walk-arounds like this, talking from the top of my head without notes, and anyway, good. But just be whilst I'm on the subject now. The sun rises where? In the east. It's early morning, and but in this case, look what's on the east. Bavaria. So West Germany is on the east, but that's just the way the border sort of moves around in this spot. Oh, then see that thing there? That sort of just reminds me of something. I was talking about the guard towers, and what they could do at times, though, they had these portable guard towers. Now, I did find one at a scrapyard. I didn't find it, I saw it. I was just waiting around, lying around there. But if you've seen photographs, for example, from Auschwitz, and sometimes you can see there's photographs with that guard tower shown, and others, there's pictures of the guard towers not there. And what they did, they're sort of more or less portable ones. So and obviously I would argue it was the same regime that created Auschwitz that created this border. The people with the same mentality. Maybe it mightn't have been the same people, but it was the same mentality. And so anyway, so sometimes they also had these portable guard posts as well. And it could be a place where they thought they needed to control a bit more, so there was something wrong, and that's what they would do. They'd put up a portable until such times they built a permanent tower. Okay, right. Well, I'm getting attacked by mosquitoes, and so I'm going to, I think, end this video here whilst I or get out of the shade and get into the sun. And my feet are all wet, as you'd expect in the early hours walking around. And just to make the point, there you go. Because of the heat, I mean, it was 27 degrees yesterday. Last year it was 37 degrees this time of year, or it hit anyway. So thanks very much for being with me. I hope you found that interesting. If you stuck with me now for 36 minutes, that's great. And I think I've shown you a little bit about what happened. Right, notice here once more now, okay, the sun's behind me, so that's the east, so I'm now heading in a westward direction, and Bavaria is therefore to the south. This vegetation's new. The vegetation there, I suspect, isn't. Well, I can't say for individual trees, but over there anyway. So thanks for being with me on the East German border, and all the best from me. Bye for now.